Okay, here are several videos on differential equations, specifically how to read the word questions. The whole thing, if you go through it correctly, should take you between 40 minutes to an hour. That will include you going through the process for each question and doing each question and then checking whether your process is correct and also checking the marking scheme afterwards. It's well worth your time doing this because if you do it now, you just throw in the time and it becomes easier later on. If you do it closer to the Leaving Cert, you're going to be a bit distracted with so many subjects and so much to worry about in applied maths. And you're less likely to actually do it the closer we get to the Leaving Cert. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to go through a rough idea on how to think about going through a process to interpret a question. And then I'll go through in the next videos all of the questions, bar one, from 2020 down to 2012. So this is my process. I have 3 tips. The second one is in 2 parts. So the first one is a really important one to maximize your marks. What you want to do is look for a differential equation or take one from a text. So it might say something like the rate of change of volume is proportional to the volume itself, or the rate of change of a population is proportional to the population itself. What you then need to do is just write down the differential equation, integrate it and get it as far as you can. That maximizes your marks. So even if you can't go any further or you make a mess of anything after that, you have got as many marks for that question as possible. So that's a general tip. The next thing that I'd ask you to do after you write down your differential equation is to just ask yourself what the variables are and what the constants are. So the way to do that is on the left hand side you'll have a derivative, so like dx dt, and if it's dx dt, the x and the t will be the variables and everything else will be constants. Or if it was dv dx, then that means the v and the x are the variables, everything else is constant. So identify what those are. Once you have those, then I'd be looking at the variables and I'd be identifying, do the variables represent growth or decline? So for example, if you had dx dt as your derivative, the thing on top, the x, that's the variable I would be looking at on the right hand side. If it's got a plus in front of it, it represents an increase, and if it's got a minus, it represents a decrease. Okay, and then the last tip would be to have a look through the text or scan the text and try to identify what each letter represents in the equation. And then once you have that, try to make sense of the equation or try to make up a story based on the equation to see can you predict what's going to happen. Once you have that done, go back and reread the question and see can you formulate a better understanding of what's going on with the question. Now that will help you no end in terms of assessing what's going on with a particular question and solving it and getting out the answer fully. These 3 steps though, I suggest doing them in full depth right now, and then over time as you become more familiar with it, they become a little bit easier. So it's almost like when you're learning to drive a car. When you get into the car, there's 50 things to do as you're driving it. It's very distracting and you can have a bit of problem. But the more you do it, the more you start linking tasks together. And instead of having 50 things, it becomes 10 different things. And then over time, the more you drive, it actually just becomes 2 or 3 things that you repeat over and over. And you might multitask with a few of those as well. Now, you've probably experienced that with your maths career as well, from first year to sixth year. There's lots of things in first year, it was very complicated, and the more questions you did, the more automatic certain processes became, and the easier this became. So we're going through that process here. Do the full method here, take your time with it, get it right, and then certain processes will become automated, and over time, this thing will be much easier. Okay, that's the end of the first video.